Hey, so what we're looking now is the unraveling of peace from 1919 to 1932, and really even into 1933. We're going to find out how the hope of Versailles crumbled into the rise of militarism. It's a really crazy ride. If you jumped in a time machine in 1919, I don't think anybody could have predicted exactly how everything was going to unravel here. And again, I don't think Hitler could have been predicted. And yet, now on this side of history, it seems almost like he was the natural end of this. So let's go ahead and get started. I do love this piece, this artwork by Otto Dix, who's a German artist. We've seen a little bit of his work earlier, but it's just this destruction of World War One, and he basically was traumatized in the trenches. And what do we know about World War One from what Dr. Spivogel did? What was the impact? I hope you noticed the lost generation. Typically I like to romanticize the American lost generation, the F. Scott Fitzgerald, the Ernest Hemingway, these really cool guys who are writers and all this. But in reality, the French lost generation is a literal generation of men from 18 to 32 who are dead or injured. We're going to see that the birth rate collapses in France during this time period. It was really a horrible time. The romantic hope of revenge, revanche with the Treaty of Versailles crumbled and destroyed. We saw that quote from the French woman who decried that she's burying her son, right? Just absolutely. They don't know what to do with battle areas. I mean, what do we do with them? Do we memorialize them? There were thousands of men, millions of men who died there. And then we get the first unknown soldier burials. And we begin to see that these men were destroyed. There's a sense of hopelessness. Well, I think that's a precursor for all of this as we look at it. So let's go ahead and get started with that. So we see this. We see now France as being embittered and alone, right? So we see this, how France was embittered and alone. And it's really a devastating moment we see here that we just like, well, holy crud, right? What's just happening here? First, I want to point out Dr. Vogel is very keen here. We see the idea of the failure of Article 1 of Versailles. Article 1 is the Anglo-American guarantee. Georges Clemenceau was really excited about this portion. He believed that once that was established, Germany would be permanently checked, that France has an alliance with both the United States but we already know the United States withdrew from the Treaty of Versailles. The British canceled their Article 1. So going right almost from the hope of Clemenceau to the misery, France is bitter and alone. So what do they have to do? What did Dr. Spivogel say? Well, do they have Russia? Nope. Do they have the United States? No. Do they have Great Britain? No. So France now is alone in having to combat against the most powerful European state. Germany is the largest population with the most industrial infrastructure. France begins to say, how are we going to proceed? You saw the Little Entente, where they're attempting to forge these relationships with Poland and Yugoslavia, and it's just really kind of ridiculous when you begin to see that. So the French now the French, they don't know who to turn to. But the one thing is, though the United States is left, they refuse to cancel their debt. And I will tell you, this is really kind of important. When we get to the end of World War II, this is going to be quite the difference with this thing called the Marshall Plan. But I just want to point out, the French now, they have a debt to the United States that who helped pay for this war. And they're going to have to figure out how to do this. So for the French, with their infrastructure destroyed up north, they're going to have to rely on those German reparations. So I want to point out that the reparations were needed for the French to pay off the United States, and the United States refused to do such a thing. So we see that. And I do love this political cartoon here, because here you see, instead of reparations, it's preparations, right? It's a play, it's the Germans. They never accepted the idea they're going to pay the reparations. I do want to point out, yep, you're right. The Allied commissions came out. It had that astonishing number. But I want you to remember, it only is going to be about 2% of the German GDP. They absolutely have the resources to pay the reparations so the French can pay off the American debt. This is quite an easy thing, but the Germans refuse. So what do? In October 1922, they announce to the world that they're not gonna pay that year's reparation in November. And now France looks to England, looks to America, and no one has the French back. The whole point is the French have to do this. So what happens? The French utilize the policy of coercion, which is part of the Treaty of Versailles. Their military invades the Ruhr Valley, occupies the German Ruhr Valley to get paid in kind. So the Ruhr crisis, a tragic thing, right? They're going to get this paid in kind. And here, I love this political cartoon. It's a German political cartoon. It's quite fearful here. It's the French kind of blocking the German resources. It's almost as if the French are being the evil ones here. Very important to see that perspective. And the Germans, they created a policy of passive resistance. And I want to point out this policy of passive resistance. What they do is they begin to overproduce money. Well, if you begin to overproduce money, money loses value. And instead of inflation, you have hyperinflation. And this was devastating for the lower and middle class of Germany. And I want to point out the German government knowingly hurt their own population. It's short-term costs for long-term gains. We'll see this in a second. Passive resistance. They could pay it if they raise taxes on the wealthy. Instead, they destroy their economy temporarily. The new German Republic, or the Weimar Republic, is going to become incredibly polarized. And the Weimar government's okay with this temporarily. And really, even Adolf Hitler leads a violent Munich, what we call the Munich beer hall push. And so we have these far left, far right kind of people who are frustrated. The lower classes are starving. They're very angry. And the German government's like, oh, it's not our fault. It's the French fault. But I will promise you, it's really the German fault. And what happens is the United States, who's supposed to be in isolation, but instead the United States gets involved here. They establish the Dawes Plan. And I hope you saw the Dawes Plan. It rewards Germany. They reduce the amount of reparations while not canceling the French debt. And they guarantee a ton of U.S. investments in Germany. This is a really bad pattern. Germany violates the Treaty of Versailles and then is rewarded for it. So I just want to point out the German policy of Germans' policies of passive resistance created the element of this concept of the whole world. It's a world crisis now that needs to happen. There's revolution. There's this fear of that maybe Bolshevism is spreading, all this chaos. And then the United States comes in and asserts their leadership here to lead. And I will tell you, the Ruhr crisis is a turning point. The German leaders had used the crisis to shift the paradigm and regain hegemony. I say hegemony, I've heard it's enunciated in different ways, but we're just hegemony, whatever. But the hegemony, the leadership. What do we see here? I want to point out this is hyperinflation. I hope in your power notes you have it. Look what happened to the value of the currency. Look at this. All of a sudden, what happens here is 1 pound of gold, right? One gold mark is now worth 1 billion or 1 trillion paper marks. This is a crisis. So that meant the lower classes, this is a policy of resistance. They overproduce money. And what do they see here? The world now begins to see these images. These children playing with the German currency. It's more valuable as a toy than currency. This changes. People in America begin to read these newspaper articles and they begin to blame it. They begin to blame the French. The Germans were stabbed in the back. The idea that the Treaty of Versailles was not something that was fair to them, and that the Germans really never lost the war. And it was the French who really were the ones that caused all the chaos. A new era is now about to emerge because there's this huge fear that if Germany collapses, Bolshevism or communism is going to rush into the main part of Europe. And I will tell you, it is my personal study that I've looked at with the documents that I've seen. It appears to me that this was the German plan. It was a the passive resistance was meant to unwind and create chaos. The whole world would see the chaos, and then who would they blame? The French. Who's the victim? Germany. And this ushered in an entire new era of diplomacy. From 1925 to 1933, a guy named Gustav Stresemann, the leader of the Weimar Republic, the German Republic. I'm going to use the word Weimar Republic. I hope you realize Weimar Republic is the new Germany. And Gustav Stresemann, he is the leader absolutely in charge of transforming this diplomacy. He's a wonderful diplomat. He is in the same kind of shoes of Bismarck, the real politic, the end justify the means, which I think passive resistance fits there nicely. And he wanted really to move Germany. So in the world of collective security with a League of Nations, surrendering your national interests for the greater good, he is doing the opposite. He wants the German national security. And he goes to Briand, who is the French pact, and they organize this thing called the Locarno Pact. The Locarno Pact was an agreement between Italy, Germany, Britain, France, and Belgium, who agreed on these post-war borders. This is crazy talk. The Treaty of Versailles has already established these western borders, but the Locarno Pact now re-guarantees them. It's a wonderful step because look what happens. Each of the members, this is led by Stresemann, each of the members said if one nation violated, the rest would unite and attack. This is important so that if France feels like they have to do the politic of coercion again, they have to invade to get their reward, that means Germany, Britain, Italy, and Belgium would go against them. So this is huge. The Locarno Pact, which looks very romantic, we're going to talk about the political cartoon in a second, but I just want to point, it really, people think there's a lot of hope here, but Gustav Stresemann has successfully shifted the leadership. And now what we see is Germany is the new leader. Germany is leading the way, has created this. And I want to point out, it completely ignored Germany's eastern border, that pesky little Polish corridor. Gustav Stresemann was already conspiring with Russia to try to redefine those borders. But regardless of that, the Locarno Pact secured the western border, the western front, if you will, and that's where we're looking at. So, that's what I wanted to do. And I do think this is the political cartoon it's an American political cartoon. Look at this idea. The pinnacle. This is the pinnacle of peace. A new era. 1,000 years of European bloodshed have now ended, and we're now in a new era of peace as Poland, Czechoslovakia, and other countries come to join. It's a hugely romantic moment. Many people in 1925 and in 1926 truly believe that what Versailles failed to do, Locarno did. And Gustav Stresemann, this foreign diplomat of the Weimar Republic, now becomes the hero. He is identified as the hero of this peace. And this spirit of Locarno continues into later. The new romantic hope is that the Locarno Pact was only the first step to this new world order of peace and tranquility that President Wilson had hoped to get. We see in 1928 this Kellogg-Briand Pact that you have in your notes. It literally, this United States-French Pact literally outlawed war. And every major country in the world signs it, including Germany, Russia, Italy. All of the countries that are now going to lead us right into World War II sign this. And with this, Great Britain and France and the United States believe, hey, we don't have to worry about anything. Everything's hunky-dory. I love this political cartoon. This is David Loeb, excuse me. He is such a great political cartoonist in the era. He's a British guy. Where we see Dahl's plan was the first step, Locarno's the second step, and here's Europe, right? And now on to the next step. Is that going to be easy to get to? Of course not. If you've ever walked on rocks, this is a really dangerous one because it's wet. So when she steps, she's going to slip and fall. Anybody who knows anything about, they know Europe is about to collapse, and it's all about disarmament. This spirit of Locarno comes to an end at the Geneva Disarmament Conference of 32-33. Every country is attempting to end war, but the countries could not agree on the differences between offensive and defensive weapons. No country in the world wanted to surrender their weapons. They wanted to be defensive. But what's the difference? Is a machine gun offensive or defensive? Is it a plane? Or what is it? So in the whole thing, in the midst of all this, since they couldn't define these kind of weapons and what to get rid of, it comes to an end. And it comes to an end when a guy named Adolf Hitler, we're going to see him more often as we get stepping into this. Adolf Hitler entered into he just becomes in 1933, he becomes the Chancellor of Germany. And he comes in and says, all right, France must immediately disarm or we will have to rearm. And the world went, yeah, all right. And they allow for Germany to begin to. So this is crazy talk. So when we look at it, I want to point out in reality, the spirit of Locarno never really existed. It was basically foreign policy created by the Germans to strengthen their position, and Stresemann and his successors only sought to protect German interests. The diplomatic shift from 1920 and 1933 saw the Germans go from villains to heroes. The French now are the villains. By 1933, the British and the French, they were blinded by pacifism. That means the attachment to nonviolence and isolationism. They were so fearful of war that what happens? All it did was guarantee a war. And by 1933, we're going to get this guy, Adolf Hitler, a guy who ideologically is proclaiming throughout the world that he wants war. And that's where we are. So I just want to make sure you understand. So we've unpacked this, right? We've unpacked it. Versailles fell. Locarno comes in. Locarno fails. And now we're in the 1930s with that Great Depression that you're about to do in breakout rooms. And we begin to see the truth is this piece never had a real chance of surviving. And I hope that makes sense.